Hello, everyone. This is Kripa Anand, and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Today, we are exploring the rapid consolidation of the global healthcare software market and what it takes to build a top performing publicly traded tech giant in Canada. In 2026, managing health and human services requires more than just clinical excellence. It requires operational intelligence and workforce automation at scale. Joining us today is Dan Matlow, President and CEO of VitalHub. With 30 years of software management experience, Dan has led VitalHub through an aggressive growth journey, serving over 1,000 clients across Canada, the UK, and beyond. Under his leadership, the company has secured a spot on the TSX 30 and reached nearly $100 million in annual recurring revenue. So, before further ado, let's welcome this special guest. Dan, welcome to the podcast. Such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Kripa. Thanks for having me today.
Now, Dan, you've taken VitalHub from a Toronto based firm to now a global leader in health software, navigating some intense capital markets along the way. So, firstly, a huge congratulations on all the expansion. And I'd love for you to, start the conversation by sharing with our audience what is VitalHub's core vision and how exactly did you pivot from struggling for capital to building a nearly $100 million ARR platform? So go ahead. What's the story?
It all starts from experience and it all starts from ideas. And I was in the healthcare software space since 1996, going back into the US healthcare system where I led a group of individuals and we grew a software company there that pivoted into healthcare and something that we learned and it grew, and that company was eventually sold off to OpenText,
Mm-hmm.
a big Canadian company, which is a coincidence. That other company had nothing to do with Canada. It was all US-based healthcare. At OpenText, we had the opportunity to lead a group there, and then for a few years and get some more big company experience. And then off I went to start my own venture called
Mm-hmm.
MedWorks.
Mm-hmm.
And we started growing this entity that was primarily focused on the Canadian marketplace, and soon learned that the TAM was not big enough, the target addressable market. You always need a big target addressable market
Yeah.
for it. And then we started moving that product outside of the Canadian marketplace to a global perspective. And we started getting the sales started increasing and things started getting better for it. And we sold that business off to a private equity group in the 2016 timeframe.
Yeah.
But during that journey, I experienced there just were a lot of MedWorks is roaming around, a lot of these smaller healthcare IT companies that were working in these small towns, providing some good services, some good solutions, and felt that there
Yeah.
was an opportunity to do a consolidation of these organizations, and off we went and started
Yeah.
growing it. I had
Mm-hmm.
experience in the public markets through MedWorks, so we leveraged some of those experience and really took that high journey. I think the first monies we raised, I
Mm-hmm.
think it was only like $3-4 million to do the first couple acquisitions, and we went public on the CPC program, and we had to halt the stock for 6 to 8 months because we could not get the money.
Yeah.
But we finally got the money, and then we just started slowly executing, and then you start getting awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and then the capital markets start getting more addressable, and
Yeah.
then we started raising capital and started making acquisition and get better, more results and got more capital, and off
Right.
we are to this stage today.
Beautiful. It's a remarkable turnaround that proves how a focused mission in healthcare can, eventually outpace speculative market trends. That's great to know, Dan. Now, let's explore how Vital Hub's Innovation Lab in Sri Lanka drives product development and supports your global growth strategy. So I'd love for you to, share this new thing with our listeners. How does your offshore innovations lab in Sri Lanka give you that, extra competitive edge in electronic health records and workforce automation? So go ahead.
We knew the costs of building software were extremely high,
Mm-hmm.
and we were going through that tech bubble at the same time, and there needed to be. So one of the first acquisitions we did was with a company called BCare, who already started to do work in Sri Lanka. They had about 22 people there, a part of their
Mm-hmm.
group. Um, so we said, hey, this is a good foundation. This is where we want to start. And we just started working with that group, and great bunch of guys and girls
Yeah.
and young and older and all types of good people that are there. And they've built some great software for us over the years. We got that group to over 220 people
Mm-hmm.
strong from 22. So we've grown it by 10
Wow.
times. And it really, we have the ability
Yeah.
to create really innovative solutions in a cost-effective fashion, and it's really turned out to be a win-win for them and for us. And we own that organization 100%, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was exciting to get that moving at the same time.
That's beautiful. Leveraging global talent for, 24/7 innovation ensures that your product suite stays ahead of the rapidly changing needs of healthcare providers. On that note, Dan, I'd love for you to, share the insights from your mind with our listeners as well. When you usually, you're taking such decisions, specifically when they're people based, what is that one thing that, helps you make that decision? Is it, the intuition that works for you? Is it, a calculated decision? What usually works for you in business decisions, basically?
Um, I think emotional intelligence and
Mm-hmm.
really trying to work with data, trying to work with results, and trying to understand if those results are correct and the data is correct. I think when you're dealing with humans or you're dealing with anything, a
Yeah.
company is just a series of parts, and everyone has to pull their weight and have their responsibilities. And if everyone understands their responsibilities are and how they can get increased responsibilities, it's amazing how people grow and how everybody starts collaborating and work together, and you start seeing the results. So I think it's data, understanding how
Mm-hmm.
things fit together, understanding the stepping stones that you need to do to get to growth are important. And
Yeah.
I think it's very important that you manage people's expectations, so that they can come to work and not work in chaos and do good work for your organization. So that's a
Uh-huh.
big part of how I like to think.
That's a very balanced approach. Did you always wanted to become an entrepreneur? Is that something that you discovered early on in life, or was it something that maybe you stumbled
Uh,
upon?
yeah, I don't know if, yeah, I think, I keep telling my kids, I don't think like I've done resumes for biographies and so forth, but I've never really looked for a job my whole life. It
Yeah.
was, one venture after the other. And even
Mm-hmm.
through university, I was doing my own businesses and so forth. So I probably um, wanted to be an entrepreneur and wanted to do things, and always
Yeah.
had those challenges in my mind. There were some challenging times where
Right.
you got a family and kids and so forth, and do you want to take the risks associated? I think you get to a certain point that once you're an entrepreneur and do something, you sort of have to be, because no one would ever hire you after that, because they'll know that you'll always want to be an entrepreneur. So
Yeah.
you really got no choice, and
Right.
that's how it goes.
Very interesting. So it was in your blood, right? That's great to know. Now jumping back to Vital Hub's aggressive M&A strategy, Dan. Um, what do you exactly look for in an acquisition? And I'd love for you to share that. What's your strategy for cross selling new solutions to your 1,000 plus clients that you've acquired?
Yeah, I think M&A can be challenging, and you really got to have a good formula for it. I think we do.
Yeah.
We're looking in our space. There's a lot of innovation,
Mhm.
but we're not structured to be the beginning part of innovation. We're
Right.
structured for those founders and those groups who take it to a certain level,
Hmm.
and then we need to commercialize it and a little bit more, and bring those processes together. So we're looking for innovative solutions that fit into our puzzle and
Hmm.
really provide added value to some of the other products that we have in our market, and we've been able to successfully do that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a big part of what we do. We're looking at the people behind those organizations. We're looking at the tech. We're looking at the numbers. We're
Mm-hmm.
looking at the abilities for us to add value to those organizations. You sort of understand what they've done, but you really try to understand what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have the ability to execute on what we can do, and that's really, I think, where we've been successful. It's one thing to think of what you can do, but
Mm-hmm.
you really have to believe that in our hands we would realistically know what to do operationally, and I think we're
Right.
pretty strong at it.
That's very well articulated. A disciplined M&A approach, turns a collection of tools into a unified must-have operating system for health human services. Before we go any further, here's a special message for all of our listeners, specifically for all the tech founders and investors watching. In 2026, the era of fragmented software is over. VitalHub's success as a TSX 30 top performer proves that the market rewards platforms that can consolidate and simplify complex industries like healthcare. If you are building in the SME space, don't just look for customers. Look for a community where your product can solve the operational intelligence gap. Consolidation is coming. Make sure you're on the side that's building the foundation for the future. Coming back to you, Dan, let's now, look at how healthcare's push for automation is shaping the future of care and driving VitalHub success. So, this conversation would have definitely been incomplete without mentioning AI or artificial intelligence, right? Because it's not even a buzzword anymore at this point. So, I'd love for you to, share with our audience, how is AI integrated into your software suite, and what specific trends are shaping healthcare delivery in 2026 that you see?
Yeah, I think the trend that we're really relied on, and I think has longevity in our space is uh, the throughput of our healthcare organization is only increasing, and it's only increasing for a number of reasons. Of course, we got an older generation with the baby boom, and we
Yeah.
have population growth through both immigration and other factors, which then create more demands on that. But the biggest reason I think that capacity issues are doing it is that there's another side of science, which is actually serving the patient, producing new drugs, producing new images, producing new techniques, different tests, different results. And every time those things happen, the individual themselves needs to physically locate themselves
Yeah.
in a premise that those therapies or those ways of researching you need to go there. So the amount of throughput that a patient goes through for a disease in 2026 is just exponentially higher than what it did even 10, 15 years ago, because of our abilities to actually treat patients. And that increases throughput,
Hmm.
and that increases complexities of moving those patients through what we call it the healthcare consortium. And we're all about how can we digitization help that? How can we move that patient more efficiently and more effectively
Yeah.
through that
Hmm.
called logistics for people that are working through that. So we have a lot of different systems that help through those throughputs, and it's a big area of what we do, and
Hmm.
it's a focus of where that happens.
Well, that was very informational and educational in nature. So thank you so much for sharing those insights, Dan. I'm loving this conversation, and definitely we'd love for you to be back, hopefully for an in-studio podcast that we do next. But for now, before we let you go, Dan, if there's one final piece of advice that you have for the Canadian tech founders who are struggling to secure capital for their vision, if you could whisper one thing into their ear, what would you say and why?
I think it's don't get enamored by how much money you raise. Don't
Yeah.
get enamored by how big you want to be. Get enamored about the problem you're solving and the business case of the problem that you're solving,
Yeah.
and prove out that business case and grow the business. It's not, and stay focused on what that is, because if one or two people get the value for it, there's no reason that 2,000 others or 200,000 or 2
Yeah.
million or 3 million people can't get the other value for it. Um, so constantly look at the value they're getting and don't get enamored by them being excited about what it does.
Yeah.
You really need to ratify that they're actually getting value from it and then take that value and grow it. That's what my word of advice would be for a young entrepreneur.
That is a great reminder that, persistence and a solid ARR model eventually win over the market. It was such a pleasure having you, Dan. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights with
Okay.
us.
Thanks for having me today.
All right, that was Dan
Okay.
Matlow from VitalHub, a masterclass on how to build a global healthcare software platform through strategic M&A and relentless operational focus. To all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and visit CanadianSME.ca for more such resources. And lastly, a very special thank you to our partners, UPS and ADP, our HR partner, for their ongoing commitment to empowering SMBs across Canada. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Kripa Anand signing off.